All right, I'd like to call to order the July 18, 2022 meeting of the West Palm Beach Planning Board. Madam Clerk, if you would kindly call the roll.
Andres Padero,
Here.
Deborah Ring,
She's here, just walking up.
Peter Pivko,
Here.
Stephen Mayans,
Present?
Will Carante, Patrick Mayfield,
Present.
Jean Marcel Jr.
Present.
Hey, Steve. Next order of business is approval of the June 20, 2023 minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review them? Are there any changes or corrections?
The date on our screen.
I'll move approval.
Last month.
Huh?
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Have we a second? May we have a second for approval of the minutes?
Deborah, second.
Excuse me, guys. Thank you. Do we have a second? Motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is the report of the planning staff. Ms. Van.
Good evening, Chair and board members. Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. To give you an update of the meeting commission approvals that have been approved since your April planning board meeting. First was for City Place for a major amendment. If you remember, this was for changes to Rosemary Square Core District. It basically did a text amendment to the regulations to permit artificial turf in the Rosemary Square area, expand the SBE firm requirements, reduce the Rosemary Square core office parking ratio to 1.75, and we did a text amendment to also allow demolition with timing for certain requirements. You heard this at your March meeting, and commission approved this at their May 1st commission meeting. The next one is Kersey Commons, located at 1501 and 1515 North Dixie Highway. Was a future land use map amendment, and a rezoning to CPD. Applicant was proposing 95,600 square foot mixed-use building, with about 84,000 of that was self-storage, and 9,000 of that was for commercial flex area space along Dixie Highway here. As you can see in orange, it's the flex space area. You heard this at your February planning board meeting, approved this 7-0, and commission had their second reading and approval on June 12th. Roseanne Academy, CSPD. This was to expand Roseanne Academy from expand the existing boundaries you can see here shown on the overhead to include these particular properties as well as the property in blue on the east side of Flagler. And then also rezone the properties that were included in the boundaries to be uniform with the entire CSPD. You heard this at your March meeting and approved 6-0, and the commission approved this at the second reading at their March 30th meeting. Medical marijuana dispensaries. Originally, this was for, let me go back up. We had a text amendment originally from staff to provide distance requirement between the dispensaries. Staff original recommendation was 1/4 mile separation and prohibited in Clematis Waterfront District. However, this is the history that's shown, staff will show the history that it went through. That recommended approval, but requested that the separation be increased to 1/2 mile. Planning board recommend denial, as you remember, 5-2 of staff's original proposal of the 1/4 separation and prohibited in Clematis Waterfront District. However, when it got to city commission meeting, the ordinance and the commission voted 3-2 to prohibit medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of West Palm Beach. And that was finally approved on July 10th. So as of July 10th, medical marijuana dispensaries are now prohibited in the entire city of West Palm Beach. That concludes staff presentation. Happy to any questions you may have at
Okay,
this time.
thank you so much. Any questions of staff? Let me start on this side. Andre, any questions?
No questions.
Deborah?
No.
Peter?
No question.
I just had a question about the medical marijuana. So is that in the downtown core or in the entire city?
Entire city.
And Angela, does that mean those that are existing have to leave, or is it just any new ones?
Any new ones, the ones that are existing are grandfathered in.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you so much. Next on the agenda are remarks by the chairperson, of which I have none. That brings us then to the declaration of ex parte communications. Let me begin by saying that to all cases this evening in which I will be participating, I have had no ex parte communications. I received no written communications. I have conducted no investigations. I have made no site visits, and I received no expert opinions. I request that these declarations and all written communications be made a part of the record. All right, let me start, Gene, with you.
As to the matter before the board, today I did speak with counsel for the applicant and had a presentation that was given to me. Other than that, I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
And Gene, I think we need you to affirm that you will base your decision solely upon the evidence presented this evening.
And additionally, I affirm that my decisions will not be influenced by the presentation, and I will make my decision based on what's presented here today.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Patrick.
I also, with respect to Planning Board Case 1955A, participate in the Zoom presentation with the applicant, and the information presented in that meeting will not influence the evidence presented tonight.
Thank you. Will?
As a matter of, in front of the Planning Board, 1955A, I did also have a Zoom call with Harvey Oyer, the applicant's attorney. I will be able to make a decision this evening based on the evidence presented, and that call will not influence my decision. I've not received any written communications from the applicant, conducted an investigation, made a site visit, or received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you so much. Peter?
I also met with the applicant for Planning Board Case 1955A on site, had an information session, and my decisions tonight would strictly be based on the information presented at this meeting.
Thank you. Deborah?
So I had a Zoom meeting with Harvey Oyer regarding Planning Board Case 1955A, and I've also received several letters via email for and against the case that is being presented. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinion. And I request that these disclosures and all written communication be made part of the record. And any decision I make this evening will be based on the evidence presented.
Thank you. Andre?
I had a Zoom call with Harvey Oyer and the applicant regarding 1955A. As to the matter of all projects presented this evening, I will have had no ex parte communications received, nor any written communications, conducted an investigation, made a site visit, or received any expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record, and my decision will be based solely on what's presented tonight.
All right, thank you so much. Next on our agenda then is the swearing in of speakers. Would everyone who intends to speak this evening please stand up and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be truthful? Thank you so much. You may be seated. Next on the agenda are continued cases, of which there are none, and that then brings us to Planning Board Case number 1955A, and at this juncture, I must recuse myself. My wife is a board member of the applicant under the county ethics rules which have been adopted by the city of West Palm Beach. I am not permitted to participate further. I have conferred with our counsel, Sam Thomas, who has confirmed my required recusal. At this point, I will turn the chair over to our vice chair, Peter Pivko. Trust me, you're trading up. I will return at the end of the meeting.
Chair, before you actually leave, make sure everybody in the audience understands, if you're gonna speak tonight, you have to get sworn in. So I know some people did not stand. So for those who did not stand and want to be sworn in, please stand so the chair can swear you in before he leaves.
So the folks who didn't stand before, it's not your intention to speak, she's just confirming that. And if that's the case, then you can stay seated. If you wish to speak, we need to swear you in, that's all. All right, I'll be in the back, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I just wanted to read, before we start the case, West Palm Beach's definition of civility and decorum. The city of West Palm Beach is committed to civility and decorum by its officials, employees, and members of the public who attend this meeting. In order to ensure that civility and decorum is maintained and that the rights of all persons appearing at a public hearing are protected, the chair asks that the following rules be observed. Board members shall be recognized by the chair and shall not interrupt the speaker. Public comments shall be addressed to the planning board as a whole and not to any individual on the dais or in the audience. Displays of anger, rudeness, ridicule, impatience, lack of respect, and personal attacks are strictly prohibited. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, and similar demonstrations shall not be permitted. Offenders may be removed from the meeting. Any person desiring to address the planning board shall file a written request with the Planning and Zoning Department prior to consideration of the matter by the planning board or prior to the public comment portion of a meeting. Persons wishing to speak shall complete a comment card for each agenda item the person wishes to address, which shall include the person's full name, address, and the number agenda item. The person shall not be recognized if the comment card is not completed. In addition, I just want to remind you, since it looks like we have a lot of speakers here in support, that the public comments are limited to 3 minutes, and please be considerate to others and stop once your allotted time has expired. Let's hear from the applicant regarding case number 1955A.
Good evening. Jamie Gavigan from Schutz & Bowen on behalf of the applicant, Temple Israel. Temple Israel is located at 1901 North Flagler Drive. It's within the Curry Mixed Use District, or CMUD, and our request before you today is to rezone the Temple site from CMUD Core 2 to CMUD Core 1 to be consistent with all the other core properties on North Flagler Drive within CMUD. And to provide a little bit of history of the temple and its background, the temple is the oldest Jewish institution, not only in West Palm Beach, but all of Palm Beach County. It was founded in 1923, and it has been located on North Flagler Drive for its entire 100-year history. Early in the 20th century, there were only about 12 Jewish families in West Palm Beach. They were almost all merchants on Clematis Street, and they wanted to create a house of worship for themselves. But they didn't have the money or the people to do so. So the Christian community rallied around them and helped them raise money to form their first temple, which was located a few blocks north of its current location on Broward Avenue. Excuse me. The temple, it's the only Reform synagogue in West Palm Beach, and it's interesting when it first moved to the temple in 1923, there weren't enough people to form a choir, and so Holy Trinity Episcopal Church sent their choir to be the temple's choir every Friday night until the temple had enough people to create its own its own choir. And also an interesting fact, is that one of the original founders of the temple, Joseph Mendel, was elected mayor of West Palm Beach in the early 1920s. And that's significant if you think about it, that, you know, that the city of West Palm Beach in the 1920s, in an era in which the KKK was prevalent in local governments in the South and in the country, the city of West Palm Beach would elect a Jewish mayor to be, you know, to be the mayor of its city. And that speaks, I think, to the progressiveness of West Palm Beach and speaks to how inclusive it was at that time and still is today. So in 1953, the temple outgrew its initial location and it moved to its current location at 1901 North Flagler Drive. And it's been there for the last 70 plus years. And over that time, it's been renovated a number of times, and it's probably due for another renovation in the near future. You know, but, and so, and I'm going to introduce Marty List, who's the co-president of the temple, to come speak as to how the temple is an active part of the community throughout its history.
Thank you, Jamie. Martin List, I live at 2425 Embassy Drive in West Palm Beach. And as Jamie said, I'm co-president along with Dr. Charlie Eaton of Temple Israel. Throughout our history, the members of Temple Israel have dedicated ourselves to Tikkun Olam, translated as the repair of the world. We put action into that phrase every day to help those in need in West Palm Beach, our corner of the world. We have collaborations with Historic Tabernacle Baptist Church, the Lord's Place United Haitian Baptist Church, Cross Ministries, and the Alpert Jewish Family Service, just to name a few. We've also been involved with the Literacy Coalition and St. George's Soup Kitchen. We regularly conduct drives to procure donations of food, goods, and services to those who are in need or are food or housing insecure in our community. We also volunteer to cook and serve at several of the churches in our area. Some of our members volunteer to read at a local elementary school through the Literacy Coalition. We housed Flagler Montessori Preschool on our campus for years until a prior renovation of our facility eliminated that possibility, but it remains our strong desire to bring a preschool back to Temple Israel in the future. We've held programs open to the community covering a wide range of issues, including hunger, poverty, homelessness, gun violence, suicide, reproductive rights, mental health, racial injustice, voter suppression, substance abuse, election participation, and immigration. On a wider scale, we've provided financial help and goods to communities devastated by natural disasters such as earthquake, flood, or hurricane, as well as communities who have been impacted by terror incidents. In short, we continue to lead by example. Temple Israel and its members remain committed to serving all of West Palm Beach today and for years to come. Thank you.
And the reason I think it's important to bring up the history and background of the temple is it shows that the temple has been part of the fabric of West Palm Beach for over 100 years. And the temple wants to be treated the same as all the other core properties on North Flagler Drive in CMUD. And so that's where I think just the time to go over the background and history of the temple is important to this discussion. And to give some background as to CMUD, or the Curry Mixed Use District, CMUD was created in 2014 through a public visioning workshop. It was a neighborhood and city-driven process. And the reason behind creating CMUD was to spur development in an area of the city that had historically not been developed at the pace that the city had hoped that it would be. As you can see in this image, all of the mustard color area is the CMUD area, the CMUD district, and it's bordered just north of 27th Street to the north, just south of Pine Street to the south, and it's bordered on either side by North Flagler Drive and North Dixie Highway. And if you see the cross hatching within the mustard colored area, that's the core district of CMUD. And that's that area of CMUD that was allotted the highest maximum allowable height. And if you see on the bottom of the screen, the temple site is one of the core properties of CMUD. So it was one of the properties in CMUD that was allowed the maximum possible height in CMUD. And so, unfortunately, development did not occur the way in CMUD, the way that the city had hoped. So in 2021, the city initiated an amendment, a major amendment to CMUD to increase the height limits in order to spur development. And essentially what they did is by the 2021 amendment, is they took the core properties and they broke it into 3 additional sub-districts: Core 1, Core 1A, and Core 2. And in Core 1, they provided a maximum allowable height of 306 feet. And in Core 1A, they provided a maximum allowable height of 350 feet. And in Core 2, they provided a maximum allowable height of 202 feet. And every core property on North Flagler Drive in CMUD was given Core 1 or Core 1A designation, except for the Temple site. The Temple site was given Core 2 designation. And that's significant because every property on North Flagler Drive, except for the Temple, was given an increase in a maximum allowable height of between 100 and 150 feet. And the Temple was given, as a Core 2 property, was given an additional 7 feet of height under maximum height. So, the Temple did not, it was, as one of the initial core properties, the Temple didn't think it was fair that it got significantly less height than the rest of the core properties. And during this amendment process, Marty List, who spoke earlier, that was the co-president of the board of the Temple, attended the public charrettes and workshops. He attended both planning board meetings, and he attended both city commission meetings. And at those meetings, he raised his hand and asked the million-dollar question: why is the Temple being treated differently than every other core property on North Flagler Drive in CMUD? And the answer that city staff gave at the time was that it was too late in the process. The amendment had already gone forward. It was too late to make any modifications. And they told Marty, come back later and request rezoning to Core 1 at a later time. And so that's why we're here today. We're here to request that the Temple site be rezoned from CMUD Core 2 to CMUD Core 1 to be treated the same as every other core property on North Flagler Drive in CMUD. We're happy to say we believe we meet all the rezoning standards. Staff agrees with us. I've listed the standards here. I'm not going to go through them one by one and waste your time unless you want me to, but staff agrees that we do meet them. And I also want to point out that staff recommends approval of our rezoning request from CMUD Core 2 to CMUD Core 1. And I also want to point out that we conducted significant public outreach as part of this application. As this map shows, we're pleased to say that we were very, very well received in our outreach efforts. The property just to our north and just to our west is the Savannah. They have given us a letter of support. And Savannah, as you may remember, they're the developer of the Olara project, which came before you about 8 months ago. It's currently under construction. There's construction fencing around the property. And in the near future, that'll be 2 306-foot towers, 35 feet away from the Temple property. And Savannah bought the property directly to the west of the Temple site. So the Savannah is the Temple's property to the north and to the west. And they've given a letter of support. We've also received letters of support, over 40 letters of support from the neighbors in the community. And those letters of support include Pleasant City Neighborhood Association, Mary Place Homeowners Association, Bush Brothers, the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches, Holyfield and Thomas Certified Public Accountants, and a number of others. And in fact, every neighbor and property owner and community organization that we met with during our public outreach, after we explained the process, our request, was supportive or wrote a letter of support in favor of our request, with the exception of Flagler Point, the property owner to our south, who is to this date not allowed us to meet with their full ownership. And I also have a binder of all the letters of endorsement. I know we've sent them to you previously, but I want to, for the record, bring them to the clerk. So what I've provided on the screen is a timeline, and I wanted to point out that after the temple filed its application for rezoning from CMUD Core 1 to Seymour Core 2 to Seymour Core 1, the first property owner that we reached out to was Flagler Point. And we met with the president, the vice president, and the general manager of Flagler Point on May 11th. And at that meeting, we explained our request. They weren't, I wouldn't say that they were excited about the prospect of having the temple property rezoned to have an increase in height, but I think that they recognized that the request did not result in an increase in adverse impact to Flagler Point. I think they recognized that whether or not in the future a 200-foot building or a 300-foot building or a 5,000-foot building is constructed on the temple site, the views from Flagler Point, and specifically the views of the north-facing units of Flagler Point, won't be any worse. They'll be the same. Whether or not you're looking at whether or not it's a 200-foot building or a 300-foot building or a 3,000-foot building, the views are the same. You're looking at another building. So we recognize that the residents and owners of Flagler Point are not excited about the idea, but the views are not any worse. The adverse impact's not worse. I think that the president, vice president, and general manager also recognized that because the temple is located north of Flagler Point, and because, as everyone here knows, the sun comes from the south, that whether or not you have a 200-foot building, a 300-foot building, under no situation will there be a shadow cast onto Flagler Point. Because the sun comes to the south, the shadow will always be cast to the north, onto the Olara development, which we have their letter of support. So there's no additional adverse impact. We recognize that Flagler Point, a number of Flagler Point residents may not be excited about it, but there's no additional adverse impact, and that's the point we were trying to get across. After the meeting, there was an agreement to meet with the full board, the full ownership of Flagler Point. A date was set, May 23rd. We sent out invitations, we ordered food, and 3 or 4 days before that meeting was to occur, Flagler Point canceled the meeting. They didn't explain why, but they canceled it. Since then, as the timeline shows, we've reached out to Flagler Point at least 9 additional times to request a meeting with their full ownership. We want to meet with the full ownership, and we want to explain our request, why we're asking for the request. We haven't been able to do that yet. We're still ready, willing, and able to meet with them, and we'd love to meet with them. Unfortunately, the board has not allowed us the opportunity to speak directly with the ownership to explain what we're trying to do and why. I also want to point out that the few owners in Flagler Point that we were able to identify and reach out to after hearing our presentation were supportive and agreed to give letters of support. And that includes the Gilbane family, who owns 4 units within Flagler Point. So I just want to point out that, that there is support, and when we were able to, speak directly with owners, that did make an impression. So with that, the request before you is and that we're making is simple. We're simply requesting a rezoning of the temple property from CMUD Core 2 to CMUD Core 1 to be treated the same as every other core property on North Flagler Drive in CMUD. It's an issue of fairness, and we believe that we should be entitled to the same treatment as the other core properties. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Any questions of the applicant, Andres? Good morning.
No.
No questions? Will?
I have a question.
Yeah, we'll go in order.
Will you clarify the current height of Temple Israel and its current allowable height?
Yes. The current height, the current height, it's far under what it's allowed. The allowable height under Core 2, it's 111 feet by right, and then with incentives, it could be up to 202 feet.
Okay.
And what we're seeking is by a request to be rezoned to Core 1, the allowable height by right would still be 111 feet, but with incentives, we would be entitled to a maximum height of 306 feet.
Okay, and your prior statement that if the building was erected to the permissible height, it wouldn't make a difference in terms of use if it was increased beyond the allowable height versus what the permissible height is that what you?
Yeah, and I was speaking to, with the assumption that we'd meet the incentives. So if we were under a Core 2, if you meet the incentives, which there's a number of incentives, a LEED certified building, affordable housing, you can get up to, under the current Core 2 sub-district, which we're in right now, you get up to 202-foot building, which, because the Flagler Point is a 9-story building, even with a 202-foot building, it's taller than Flagler Point, so the views from Flagler Point would be looking at, on any floor would be looking at a 202-foot building. So even if you built more stories on top of that, the view is still the same. And that's the point I was trying to make by that.
Thank you.
Patrick? Yeah.
I do have a question, and this might be a question that staff might need to address, but what is the current height limitation for Flagler Point?
9 stories.
9 stories.
And I do want to point out that, the current limit but Flagler Point could come back and request, or if a developer bought Flagler Point and request a RPD, a residential plan development, and build as high as City Commission would grant waivers for. So it doesn't, just because they're not currently in CMUD does not prevent them from requesting, or a developer from requesting additional height. But it's currently, I think, a 9 or 10-story building.
Okay. That is the limit. It's 9 stories.
I'm not sure what their limit is under their current zoning, but that's what the building is now.
And this might be an additional question for staff, but it's my understanding that there is consideration given to extending the CMUD southward along Flagler. And has that been discussed?
Yeah, let's wait for the staff after him.
I'll hold my questions till then.
Will? Nothing? Any other questions? May we hear from staff?
Good evening, Linda Louise, Senior Planner for the record. So this is a privately initiated text, actually rezoning request for the subject property at 1901 North Flagler Drive to change the zoning of the subject property from CMUD Core 2 to CMUD Core 1. So just a quick background history on the Curry Mixed Use District regulations. Back in 2021, the CMUD regulations and district zoning map went through a major amendment to spur development activity within the district. As part of the amendment process, the CMUD regulations were modified to allow for greater building height within the district. This additional building height could be achieved through the application of a height bonus program that's offered within the district. So during the amendment process, the original CMUD Core sub-district, which is depicted right here, was split into Core 1A, Core 1, and Core 2, and that to accommodate the increases in building height. It also created a logical height transition from the center of the core to the edge of the district. So this image here is a massing study of what was prepared at the time of the 2021 amendment process, which shows the building height transition at the maximum development potential from the center of the district along Flagler Drive to the edge of the district. So as you can see, the building height tapering off to what staff believe was an appropriate building height transition to accommodate the new building heights. So fast forward to today, as a result of the increase in development pressure, a mayor commission work session was held on May 8th to discuss building height within the Curry Mixed Use District and the possibility of expanding the southern boundary of CMUD and whether or not to increase the building height within the district. It was also an opportunity to bring back to the table the applicant's desire to increase building height on the Temple Israel property by rezoning to Core 1. And the purpose of the work session was to get feedback and directive from the mayor and commissioners on the issues. And at the conclusion of the work session, no major issues or concerns were raised with increasing the building height on the Temple Israel site, and staff was directed to move forward with the applicant's rezoning application to Core 1. So just to quickly go over the height allowances between Core 1 and Core 2 and what that would mean, the base height in Core 1 and Core 2 are the same at 111 feet, which means it's the permitted height by right. It's also the same height of the 9-story, 112-foot tall Flagler Point condominium building, which is located immediately south of the property. Therefore, the bonus height in both the Core 1 and Core 2 would be above the roof line of the Flagler Point building. Based on the maximum height allowances in Core 1 and Core 2, which is currently set under the current zoning of 202 feet under Core 2. The proposed zoning would increase that maximum building height with the height incentives to 306 feet. And that would be a difference or an additional 104 feet in building height on the subject property. So this slide depicts the height and building mass study provided by the applicant on the subject property with the current and proposed zoning and in context with the surrounding area. So the image to the left is of the maximum height at the Core 2 under a building mass, just for informational purposes. And the image to the right shows the building mass and height at the maximum at 306 feet with the proposed Core 1 zoning. So in addition to the height and mass study provided by the applicant has also included shadow studies of the subject property under the current and proposed zoning at the maximum height. According to the provided studies, no direct shadow will be cast on any buildings to the south, including Flagler Point. It should also be known that the rezoning will have no impact on the capacity of public facilities, and that's because the development is capped for the entire CMUD district per the city's comprehensive plan. Any required improvement to any public facilities as a result of redevelopment, a redevelopment project, will be at the expense of the developer, and that is typically evaluated at time of a development application. So the maximum building height in Core 1 is a substantial increase in building height, and staff does have concerns with the significant height increase next to the 9-story Flagler Point building. With that said, it will be critical for the applicant to engage with the community and adjacent property owners on any proposed redevelopment application prior to the submission of a formal redevelopment application if the rezoning is approved. Staff has received a number of letters from the public in the form of objection and support letters. These letters have been included in the board packet. However, we've also received several additional letters in support and in opposition of the rezoning, and that was after the staff report was printed. So they have been presented before each board member this evening for your review. Based on staff's analysis, staff is recommending approval of Planning Board Case Number 1955A. So even though staff does have concerns with the building height impact adjacent to the property immediately south, the rezoning must be evaluated based on the standards of our zoning code. Based on staff's review of the rezoning standards, the application has met those standards, and therefore staff is recommending approval. And that concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions,
Thank you,
I'm
Ms. Louie.
happy to answer.
Let me start by having a quick question. Could you please elaborate as to what are some of the incentives that allow developers to increase the height?
So some of the incentives would include a workforce housing component. If the applicant were to provide workforce housing, they could obtain additional height through that. There is also, incentives for providing additional open space, contribution to the Curry Park improvements. So those are some of the a la carte options for the additional height that the applicant would be able to achieve.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start at this end. Jean, do you have any questions from staff
If you could come back to me.
after? Yeah. Okay. Patrick?
I guess my question from before, I'd be interested to understand more the context of the mayor's panel discussion about the potential expansion of the District South, and if that has any impact from staff's viewpoint on the recommended approval of this application.
I'll be happy to address that. Rick Green, Development Services Director. We had been talking about an expansion of the CMUD district south of the existing boundary, which again, the Temple Israel site occupies the southern boundary of the existing CMUD district. So we're going to have a workshop on July 27th across the hall. Again, we invite everybody to attend that meeting. The thought was after that meeting, we would then have a workshop discussion with the planning board that might happen in August or September at the latest. After the workshop, we would come back for a formal presentation to the planning board. So we'd have at least 2 workshop discussions, one with staff, one with the planning board, before we brought it to the city commission. South of this particular property, there are several developments that were approved as planned developments, either residential planned developments or what is known as POR planned developments, professional office residential. So Flagler Point is one of those developments. You've got Majestic Towers, you've got the Waterview, you've got the Slade. All of those, with the exception of Flagler Point, we would probably exclude from an expansion of CMUD South, simply because those developments are already governed by an approved plan development. So no sense in having an overlay or a new criteria when they were approved by the city commission, years earlier under a plan development. To continue the continuity of the expansion of CMUD South, we would include Flagler Point within the CMUD South district, but the original approval, the original plan development approval that was granted to Flagler Point would remain intact, and that's what would govern any future amendments to that development. The intent then is to include the parcel south, and that was one of the items we discussed because there's a proposal to include that property as a Core 1 district. So part of the discussion we had at the Mayor Commission meeting on May 8th was the fact that Flagler Point would in essence be sandwiched between 2 Core 1 districts. So that is a concern, but again, that's not what's before you today. And then the property east of Dixie Highway, we would propose to rezone as what is known as a transition district, which would allow up to 163 feet in height. That's what you see in the blue area when you look at the CMUD maps. But all of that is subject to discussion. We want to get input from the public before we bring that forward. But it is somewhat related to your point, Mr. Mayfield.
Thanks.
Will?
So Rick, how far south would the proposed new CMUD expansion go?
It would be up to 14th Street.
Up to 14th Street. And then someone in their opposition letter had put something about a proposed 1717 and 1701 North Flagler. Is that what you were referencing, Rick?
Yes, there's a proposal. That would be the parcel that is seeking to be rezoned as part of the CMUD South expansion to a Core 1 district.
So what is the current zoning height for that property before their application?
That is professional office residential, I believe, so it's based on the White and Cake approach, so it's a limited height, I believe, 40 feet? Yeah, the setback. So the more room you have for the setback, the higher up you can go. So without the CMUD South expansion, like the other developments along that corridor, they would come in as a planned development and in all likelihood seek waivers from the setback requirement to achieve the height they're seeking.
Okay. Thanks.
Deborah, any questions?
I just have one clarification I need. I believe you expressed that staff had some concerns with the increased height for Core 1. Could you share some of those concerns?
Sure. Okay, so when the CMUD regulations, when we went through with it back in 2021, staff did analyze how we could accommodate the increase in height. And to us, it made sense to taper off the building height from the core, which is the most intense zone, and just taper off the height and intensity all the way to the edge of the district. So we did also look into the parcels that were immediately adjacent to the district and also abutting to it. So we looked at what appeared to be logical to us. And at a height, the Core 2 also offers significant height increases. And we looked into the impacts of the height in the massing next to the 9-story Flagler Point condominium. And if it were to be double, that would, obviously be a even significant height increase further beyond the 202 feet, which they are permitted to have right now with incentives.
Thank you.
Andres?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
I have a couple of questions. If an applicant satisfies all the incentive requirements, is that bonus height automatically granted, or how does that work?
Yes, they do have options in our code, and if they do satisfy the requirements based on, what's offered through the height incentive program, then yes, they can achieve that height or the additional height up to a maximum of 306 feet in the Core 1 or 202 in the Core 2 subdistrict.
Okay, so as it is now, the 202 feet would be allowed?
That would be the bonus height. So they're permitted by right up to a height of 111. So that's by right. But if they wanted to achieve that additional height, then they would have to apply the height bonus.
Okay, my second question, this is a two-tiered process, correct? So if for some reason this board were to recommend approval, it would need to go to the city commission, correct?
So this is just for the rezoning.
Okay.
The planning board is an advisory board, so they would make that recommendation to the city commission.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Okay, now we're going to hear from the public. Did anybody arrive late that was not sworn in, that submitted a card to speak? I was. Please raise your right hand. Please swear that the testimony you're about to provide will be truthful? Yes. Thank you. Okay, first we're going to start with two presenters, Marisol and Fran Perchik. If you could please come to either board.
Hang on a second.
If you are speaking, could you please make sure that I have your card, your comment card? Thank you.
Okay, here goes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marisol. I'm a resident at Flagler Point, and I am asking you to vote no on this 1901 rezoning request. As you can see, this is what our current North Flagler Drive waterfront looks like. And here is the proposed height illustration from the 1901 application. This does show height, but it is misleading in terms of volume. It is transparent and the horizon can be seen, minimizing the true mass of the buildings being proposed. The proposed skyline, as you can see in the middle, Flagler Point is in a canyon. Our visual depicts massive disparity in size at 200 feet and at 300 feet. You can also see here, Flagler Point is surrounded by concrete walls, forever changing our community character. The look and feel of our community is destroyed by this overdevelopment. Also, looking east is full development picture of every building that is going to be potentially built on the either north side and right side of us. The CMUD plan was a very precise in zoning regulation 94-215, Section G, as Linda Louie had mentioned in 2021. Rezoning CMUD for the 1901 purpose requested today destroys the long-debated and ultimately agreed-upon principle of having the highest density within the center of the district and then transitioning to lower building heights to the adjoining communities to the north and the south. The one principle regarding height and density was probably the most debated of all CMUD issues. In past meetings and public comment sessions, city planning management has supported this transitioning principle, again referring to what Linda said, 2021. Here's a view of 1901 at 202 feet, which would be essentially compatible with CMUD, although I would prefer it at 100. So this just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. Again, CMUD was imagined in the early 2000s and subsequently rezoned twice, at each step increasing the allowable building heights to increase return to developers. Finally, the code was adopted after what is likely thousands of hours of work by the city, planning council, city commissioners, and the community at large. All of this work, almost 2 decades worth, will be laid to waste with this single address spot zoning. Rezoning CMUD again and again, this time for a single address, destroys the citywide desired objective of having predictable development standards. Allowing the 1901 rezoning uniquely disadvantages or discriminates against the properties on the southern border of CMUD. The rezoning proposal maintains the principle of transitioning to lower building heights to connect to the northern neighborhoods. However, it eliminates the transitioning to lower heights to connect to the southern neighborhoods. This is a unique disadvantage to the buildings to the south. While we agree that more height may be allowed in these transitions to the south, eliminating it completely cannot be good planning, good code, or good governance.
Go ahead, finish up.
Here.
Finish up quickly. Finish up.
Okay, thank you. So, in the packet, 1901 zoning justification is inaccurate. The primary basis of the 1901 rezoning request is that they were uniquely disadvantaged, claiming incorrectly that 1901 was the only property originally zoned core and later rezoned core 2, reducing their allowable height. This claim is false. The 901 property was not the only property reclassified from core to core 2 and therefore not uniquely disadvantaged. In addition to the 1901 parcel, the parcel bordered by Piccadilly Street, Broward Street, and Butler Street, ours shown below, which actually should be moved over a bit to the right, was also originally designated core and was later reclassified at core 2. Both parcels were rezoned to core 2 because they were a transitioning parcel to an existing low-rise neighborhood. In conclusion section of this staff report, the city explicitly recommends maintaining the current CMUD transitioning plan from the report section 7 conclusions. It is staff's professional opinion that the building height transition under the current zoning map for CMUD is logical and should remain. As Linda Louie also mentioned, this was in 2021.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fran, to you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, Fran?
Hi, I'm Fran Perchik. I'm a resident of Flagler Point. I first want to say, and this is not part of my presentation, I love the temple. I love the temple. This is not about the temple. This is about a huge residential tower. Just wanted to make that point. You see the shadow study here provided by the applicant. That shadow study is inaccurate and misleading. If you see the shadow study at the bottom, you will see the full shadow study done of that same time of day and same date. The shadow of the building will go over the entire Lake Worth Lagoon. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. Impacts to the natural environment. In the justification statement, it was noted that there would be no impacts to the natural environment, that the project complies. That's just not so. There are impacts to the natural environment due to the construction process. Aside from dust and debris and noise, which will impact nature, we'll also have many impacts to the people of the neighborhood way too many to include here at this time with our time limit. There's even a longer list of concerns about permanent impacts to Lake Worth Lagoon. So first and foremost, you saw that shadow there. That's represented on the shadow study. Seagrass is critical to imperiled species such as the manatee, and seagrass, first and foremost, needs sunlight to thrive. With shadows casting over seagrass, there could be some critical problems. Also, there are a number of other imperiled species. I don't have time to list them all here, but they're protected under the Endangered Species Act. And then further, Palm Beach County has a Lake Worth Lagoon Habitat Management Plan, which the purpose of their plan is to restore and to protect the lagoon. Millions of dollars have been spent doing so. So I would encourage you to talk with the folks at the county as you make this decision, which will have permanent impacts on the lagoon. There are other impacts here. I'm going to skip through a couple of them, but we all know about sea level rise and the problems that we have with King Tide along North Flagler Drive, where it's completely inundated. We're also concerned about building on this limestone substrate. We're thinking about saltwater intrusion, and we're thinking about some things that have happened in other towns that have concern for us. Mentioning what we might have mentioned earlier today, in the May 8th Mayor Commission work session, the mayor gave some direction to approve rezoning, and we believe that the city took that guidance as a directive to move forward. So here, looking along South Flagler, looking south along Flagler, this is the Flagler Point down at the bottom left by the cars. You can see that Alara already takes over, but right next to Flagler Point is a 112-foot temple. Okay, it looks like I may continue.
How many more do you have? How many more?
I have a couple more, but I'll skip through, and I just want to show you. This is what it would look like. You can see the tall building surrounding Flagler Point. And then looking north on Flagler, that's 1901 next to Flagler Point. It's a wall, basically. And so this is what it would look like at 111 feet for 1901. And this is 306 feet for 1901. I have a couple of other comments. I don't know if we have time for those, but we really implore you to think about this decision. We don't want 300 plus feet. We'll be completely walled off. We'll be in a canyon. Our way of life, our lifestyle, everything will change for us. We feel as if we might be zoned out, and we're very concerned about that. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I have a list of approximately 23 speakers. So what I would like to ask you, if I call your name, to come up to either one, and then I want at least to stack two people at a time to expedite the changeover when you're speaking. So Stephanie Novak, Pamela Owen, Beverly Bernstein, and Maria Crescio. If you can just go ahead and come to one of the podiums. Just come up to one of the podiums, yeah. And just state your name, please, and address when you come up.
Thank you, Board. My name is Stephanie Novak Ricada. I look at this a little differently.
Do you please speak into the mic?
I look at this situation a little differently. I own a unit there, I rent it. I've owned it for 17 years. When we bought the unit, I'm next to a temple. I think here's something that no one is talking about. What does a temple, a house of worship, the temple is so committed to the community. What do they need 100, 200, 300 feet of airspace? Are they in the God business? Or are they in the retail, or I'm sorry, residential
could you please address
luxury?
us? Thank you.
The residential luxury development business. Okay, what are we really talking about here? Now, there's a project on Australian Avenue, right round down the road a piece. Everybody see this? This is the Edge.
Please, the board.
This is the Edge building. You know it, it's down the road a piece. Do you see what these people have to deal with now? What is their apartment value? These people here with this new construction, this will be what the temple has in store for us, okay?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, if you're not on the microphone, they can't give you
All right, I don't know how to do this. What, is this what the temple has in store for us? These people cannot give their apartments away. The tenants whose leases are up are out of there. And the tenants that are mid-lease are requesting drastic rent reductions. And when their leases are up, they're out of there too. What kind of community are we talking about here? Temple Israel of West Palm Beach. And I am a birthright Jew. So
Would you please address the board? Thank you.
This is not
No.
about any kind of prejudice or racism. This is about fairness. I come here in love and respect. Where's the love and respect here? Is this what we have to look forward to? Money is not everything. Money is not everything. They're in no need. They don't have to do this. They want to do this. He said, the lawyer, $1 million question. Yes, it's a multi-million-dollar question. And what do we get?
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maria Crescio. I'm at Flagler Point. I'm a registered nurse with 35 plus years of caregiving experience, which includes many years of home health experience, traveling around Palm Beach County to care for countless individuals and families since I moved here from Pennsylvania in 1988. Since 1988, and prior to moving to Flagler Point, I'm proud to say that I've always lived in the West Palm Beach area. I recall many years ago doing home care visits at Flagler Point, smiling and thinking, I'd love to live here someday. Well, my hard work and dedication paid off, and I've lived at Flagler Point for the past 6 years. I love the peace, tranquility, safety, approachability, and uniqueness of our North Flagler Drive neighborhood. My ongoing effort to maintain my current health and well-being includes being able to breathe clean air and enjoy unobstructed sunlight, foliage, and our beautiful waterfront. I rely on this daily experience to support my ongoing effort to be the compassionate and knowledgeable caregiver that I've always been. I do have a live-work lifestyle here, and I'm not ready to surrender that. Additionally, I do support progress, development, beautification, infrastructure improvements, and the vision that others will be able to share in this experience, especially for dedicated professionals such as myself. So please, I ask one thing of you. Be reasonable. Think about this. Do not take away this experience that I've established for myself, as this is my home. Again, please be reasonable and do not take this experience away from my neighbors and dear friends who surround me, as I sincerely believe our waterfront, our neighborhood, and our city deserve a better future. Please always remember the golden rule. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Beverly Bernstein, and then Pamela Owen, if you can come up to the other podium, and
Beverly
Martin
Bern-
List, also please come up. Go
I'm
ahead.
Beverly Bernstein, and I live at Flagler Point. And thank you for this opportunity to speak. Let me see here. I'm vehemently opposed to the change in the zoning height at 1919 North Flagler Drive, currently the home of Temple Israel, and the future change of zoning at 1717 North Flagler Drive. I feel by giving them the acceptance of the zoning, it's going to give a green light to the 1717 property. An extension was already approved for the 1919 property and is not compatible with the buildings within the block that the temple sits on. The temple sits on the block that Flagler Point sits on the other side of Pine Street, not on the other side where the Olara is. It's not on that block, so it's not compatible with the buildings that are already in existence on that block, being the lofts and the Slade and so on. The residents on the north side of Flagler Point will already have lost their view and property value, and to go higher is obscene. The temple did not have meetings with the public. They only had a slide presentation, similar to what they provided here, of their role in the community for 100 years. They met with the vice president, the property manager, and the president of the board. The mayor, in his May 8th workshop meeting, seems to already have made his decision and encouraged all at the workshop to vote for option 2, 306 feet for the 1717 property, which if you go on YouTube, you could view it yourself and see what he says. I'm glad that the people at that meeting thought that the height was not a problem and it wasn't an issue, but they don't live where I live, do they? They don't live at Flagler Point, where we'll be surrounded and in a canyon. And the sun is on the north side in the winter, and it's on the south side in the winter and on the north side in the summer. So it's not only on the south side all year. How many community meetings do we have to hear the opposition of the residents? It's just the same as last year at the meeting for the 1717 property. There wasn't one person in the room that was for it. I'm really afraid that if this goes ahead, that it will, as I said previously, give a green light to the 1717 property. I'm a senior citizen on a fixed income, and at this point, I cannot move out of this future concrete jungle, sandwiched between and caverned by monstrosity buildings. I've lived in Palm Beach County since 1993. 2.5 years ago, I chose to live here in this tranquil, beautiful, serene part of town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker will be Pamela Lowen and Martin List. Beth Penacor, could you please also get ready to come up to the podium, and Janice Rosenberg.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My name is Pamela Lowen. I am a resident of Flagler Point. I really wasn't expecting to speak. I'm here to support the residents of the building. I think that a lot of things have been overlooked. I think that there isn't a lot of science that's being looked into. I'm sorry, should I wait? The lawyer that was speaking earlier said that our view would not be obstructed. He has never been in that building to see that. So how can he speak from that? How can he speak because he has no experience living in our building? I just feel like we haven't been heard, and this has been ongoing throughout the community. I also look at all the board members, and I see that some people are glazed over, some people aren't listening. That's my own personal opinion. But if you were in our shoes and you were living in that situation, you would fight just as hard as we are. So I would appreciate that you listen to every fact before you come to any kind of conclusion, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, Martin List has sent in a card in support of the temple request to rezone the property. And Beth Panacor also sent a card in support of the rezoning for the temple. Janice Blasberg also sent in a card in support of the temple. Karen Steinberg supports the rezoning of the temple. Andy Krasberg supports the rezoning of the temple. Charles Eaton also supports the property rezoning. Jan Kreisberg, did you want to come up? Jan, you have no comments on the card. Also, Reed Goldstein, please come up. And Charlotte Wright. Please state your name, please.
My name is Charlie Eaton. I live in West Palm Beach. I'm co-president of Temple Israel. I was born in Good Samaritan Medical Center, and I've been friends with Temple Israel members my entire life. Temple Israel has been a cornerstone of Palm Beach County for 100 years, and it remains a beacon of social action and spiritual growth. Its future growth should be supported because this is in the best interest of our entire community. And this is why I strongly support Temple Israel's request to rezone our property to Core 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Reed Goldstein, thank you. I'm a resident at Flagler Point. There's a couple elephants in the room. I'll probably talk about a couple of them. First, I want to thank the committee and the board members and everybody here for listening and talking here. The first, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly to time elements. Some of these we won't be able to answer, but if you would please consider everything. Climate change is upon us. Most people 100 years ago when the synagogue started weren't even aware of climate change. If the synagogue itself, if the temple was only growing themselves to raise the height, but they're not, it's going to turn into a real estate venture, obviously. The fact that it said no, there was something I saw that the committee said no impact on the capacity of public housing or public buildings. I'm going to get to that. No adverse effect is erroneous. There's going to be heat reflection. There's going to be a huge carbon footprint coming off of this build. I've built twice in California. Some questions I would recommend asking your partners: electricity, the capacity during storm situation. How long will the power outages take to get fixed for 4,000 new residents and all the sea mud increases? The water capacity during storm situations, the sewage capacity, the drainage capacity, the garbage that's going to come from the builders and the vendors is unheard of. I built two big homes. The garbage and the waste is beyond belief. The security that's going to be needed around the whole area, who's going to do that? The litter, the nails, the bolts causing flat tires left and right, the pollution, the noise pollution, the pollution in the lakes, the air pollution. Again, I come back to the carbon off-print that most people don't even look at, haven't looked at. They're just starting to because we're in the midst of it. The emergencies, has your team talked to the police, the firemen, the paramedics? Will they be able to serve this new impact of 4,000 new residencies? The Postal Service capacities, and one of the other ladies hit it. Chicago's closing down. They're not going to allow more building. Arizona's closing down, no water. Chicago downtown is sinking. That's what's going to happen here. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate your listening.
State your name, please.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairperson and Planning Board members. My name is Jay Kreisberg. I live at Saratoga Bay here in West Palm Beach. My wife Cindy and I encourage you to approve the proposed rezoning for my temple, Temple Israel of West Palm Beach. Specifically, the rezoning is Core 1 of the Curry Mixed-Use District so that our property can have the same height as all of the other property owners along Flagler Drive. Some benefits of this rezoning will enable the temple to add a preschool and to become a beacon to the Jewish community at large with a world-class designed temple. Please use your vote to support a proposed rezoning. Excuse me. Please use your vote to support our proposed rezoning site. It is also consistent with other neighboring sites. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board Chair and members of the Planning Board. My name is Charlotte Wright. I'm here to express my support for Temple Israel's request for rezoning its property into Core 1 of CMUD. As a dedicated member of this vibrant community, Board Chair for Police Athletic League West Palm Beach, and Chief Operating Officer for Manifest Church, I firmly believe in the significance of faith-based organizations like Temple Israel and the positive impact they have on our community's social fabric and well-being. Established in 1923, Temple Israel is a sacred space for worship, study, and fellowship that fosters a sense of belonging, shared values, and personal growth. This supportive environment promotes emotional well-being and provides individuals with a sense of purpose, moral guidance, and spiritual nourishment. As community members and supporters, it is our responsibility to support the growth and development of institutions that contribute to the social, spiritual, and cultural fabric of our community. Temple Israel has consistently demonstrated their commitment to these ideals, and I believe it is in the best interest of our community to support the rezoning request into Core 1 of CMUD. I kindly request that you consider approving this zoning request, allowing Temple Israel to enjoy the same benefits as the other properties along Flagler Drive in CMUD. With gratitude, Charlotte Wright.
Thank you. Thank you. No comments, please. Timothy Morris has sent a card in support of the rezoning. Bill Holland also sent in a card in support of the rezoning. Donald Burgess, you want to come up and speak? And then Michael Small, please come to the other podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Other members of the Planning Board, good evening. Donald Burgess, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches. We already have submitted a letter of support. It should be in the binder that was brought up earlier. I'm just going to raise a few more points for emphasis. The rezoning request that is under consideration is not unusual and needs your support to move forward for its ultimate approval. Whatever the reason may have been to leave Temple Israel out of the rezoning exercise that granted height increases to its neighbors in Core 1 of the CMUD, there can be no justification for leaving things as they are. This request simply asks that all entities in the CMUD be granted similar rights. This is a request for the application of the principles of fairness and consistency. Temple Israel is celebrating 100 years this year, and during the course of its existence has contributed much to the development of our city and county. The rezoning request has received unanimous support of the members of the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches, and we are asking this body to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Small, and then Roger Hurd sent a card in support of the rezoning. Bean, I'm sorry, I can't read your name. You wrote it very quickly here. B-E-N-T-A, in support of the rezoning. Tamika Graham also supports the rezoning. Charlie Daniels, in support of the rezoning. Mr. Small?
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Michael Small. I'm here this evening with my wife, Ann Small. 4 generations of our family have belonged to Temple Israel, and we're now celebrating 100 years since it was started. 53 years ago, my wife, Ann, and myself moved to this area with 3 kids under the age of 4 years. I took a position at that time as legal counsel to the Palm Beach County Building Planning Zoning Division, to the Planning Commission, to the Zoning Commission, to the Board of Adjustment, to the Construction Industry Licensing Board. 10 months later, I was appointed as county attorney for Palm Beach County. I did everything from A to Z, airports to zoning, representing all of the commissions and the county commission. At that time, I learned very quickly to appreciate those of you who volunteer your time, your effort, your knowledge, your skills, your experience in matters such as this. It's never easy, and I understand that. All we're asking today is what anyone else who comes before you is asking, simply to be treated fairly, consistently, competently, and in this case, to allow for us to do the same as those who are our immediate neighbors are doing. Immediately to our north, within 35 feet, a building is being built 306 feet. To the south, another high-rise a block and a half away. Temple Israel simply wants to be treated consistently, fairly, and give benefit back to the community that we've been doing for the last 100 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Holland? Oh, sorry, go ahead. And Tamika Graham, would you please come up? Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Carly Daniels. I am one of the rabbis at Temple Israel of West Palm Beach. While new to the area, our team of professional staff and lay leadership and our community are eagerly planning for the next chapter in Temple Israel's future. I would like to request that the Planning Board support Temple Israel's request to rezone our property to Core 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Holland. I live in Pleasant City. I've been a resident of Pleasant City for 65 years, and I'm in support for the temple. I think that it would be fair, since everyone else is getting 300 and some feet, that the temple get 300 and some feet. Also, the impact that it would have on our community, which is Pleasant City. If you don't know, that every time a development happens, the CRA gets funds, and the funds are contributed to the neighborhoods that are in the CRA Northern District. And these funds can help us with our development, security. And also another thing with the development, I feel that it would help minimize crime in that corridor on Dixie Highway. Because with development, people, they have to move. We have a problem now with transit, prostitution, and drug dealings on that corner. So those are my reasons for support of the temple. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamika Graham is in support of the application. Carly Daniels, also in support of the application. Robert Herc supports the application. Donald Burgess, spoke. Ryan Daniels is in support of the rezoning. Suzanne Ganane, also in support of the application. Kevin Witaski, also in support of the application. And Brian Polton, must be you.
Ryan Daniels.
Oh.
Couple cards before.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Rabbi Ryan Daniels. I am one of the other rabbis at Temple Israel here in West Palm Beach. While new to this area, our team of lay folks and staff are eagerly planning for our next 100 years of investment in this community. And of course, I'd like to request that this planning board support Temple Israel's request to rezone to Core 1. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Brian?
Yes, I'm Brian Polton.
Go ahead.
Hello, good evening, board. Thank you for hearing from us. I'm in opposition to the proposal for the following reasons. And really the main reason that I'm opposed to this is because of the potential environmental impacts. I really don't understand when I look at the development that's being proposed, why there's such a rush to raise all these heights. I mean, I kind of understand. It's money driven. That's what it really is. And what I'm really concerned about is the impact on the environment. I want to follow up on what Fran spoke about here. I'm a Palm Beach County native. I'm born and raised here. I spent most of my life living in West Palm Beach. So I know the area, and I've gotten to know the environment. And increasing these heights and having this construction is absolutely going to have a huge impact on the environment. And if we're thinking about why we're building these high-rises and these condominiums, people want to live here for the environment. If we destroy this environment, it destroys the entire purpose of creating these new high-rises. And I asked the board to consider that. During the pandemic, when we had the social distancing overnight, all the cars stopped. All the boat traffic stopped. And I live in Flagler Point now, and I walked out and I noticed something. This is just my observation. It's not a study. I don't have any statistics with me. But I got a chance to really notice the marine life that's there. If you ever walk down and to take a look over that seawall, there is a lot of marine life that lives there. There are 3 sea turtles, big sea turtles. See them every night. They come out, they feed off the rocks, they poke their heads up. I've seen stingrays. You see dolphins in the wintertime chasing the bait fish. One time, about 2 years ago, I couldn't believe it. I looked down. There was a nurse shark, 4 or 5 foot nurse shark, just winding its way down the seawall. Absolutely beautiful. Let me follow it for 50 feet. Found out my neighbors told me, oh, that shark lives here. It's been here in between the building and the bridge, and it lives here. If you have this construction, all of this construction, it's not just the construction noise. You're going to have increased traffic, increased non-point pollution, runoff, more sewage, and it's really going to affect the environment. Fran was correct. The county has spent a lot of money doing environmental restoration projects all up and down the Intracoastal Waterway. There's one, I believe it was county project, that is just to the north of this proposed increase in height. And I'm very concerned. I went out actually last night. I went to go look at it around 7:30 at night, and I was blown away by how big the mangroves got since the last time I was down there a few months earlier. If you're going to have that increased height, that shadow effect, it's going to affect those environmental restoration projects. And if it's not for this project, and I agree with Fran, we love the Temple. Temple are beautiful neighbors. But if it's not for this project, I ask you to consider these arguments about the environment when looking at future projects looking south. Thank you.
Thank you. Jade Davis is in support of the application. Harry and Margaret Kaufman, did you want to come up and speak? You fill out a card? No? Okay. Carlos Escobar strongly supports the rezoning. Michael Jonas also supports the application. Howard Berman strongly in favor of the rezoning. Ann Small and Elsa Malinsky. Please come up if you want to speak. Your name, sir?
I'm Michael Jonas.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. My wife and I came to Palm Beach County in 1980, and we joined Temple Israel in 1986, and we've been members ever since. And during that time, I've practiced law in West Palm Beach for over 30 years. And as part of my practice, I represented the temple when it renovated in 91, and I chaired the renovation of the temple in 2009. And I worked with the city when I chaired the renovation, and I understand what local government does to protect environmental matters, what the county government does to protect environmental matters, and what the state does in that instance. But what I did notice in the time that I've lived here in Palm Beach County is, and it's in particular in West Palm Beach, is change, growth, development, and redevelopment for both Temple Israel and the city of West Palm Beach. The redevelopment along Flagler Drive is nothing short of remarkable. We want to be a part of that. We want to share in what our neighbors 35 feet away are enjoying. We are going to grow, provide revenue for the Community Redevelopment Agency. We're going to provide revenue to the local neighborhood. And the change and the growth and the development and the redevelopment are in some respects inevitable. We have the right, meeting certain conditions, to go to 200 feet. There is virtually no difference for the local community if we go to 300 feet in terms of the aspect of the height. But what it does, and what it could do, is add a lot more money to the revenue for the city, the neighborhood, and the redevelopment agency. So with respect, I ask that you give us what our neighbors have, 306 feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Small, did you want to speak? Elsa Malinsky, did you want to speak? Howard Sorensen, did you want to speak? He just says he's opposed to the heights. Persha Robertson Supporting the application, Thomas Conway. And that's all the cards that I have.
Thank you very much for hearing my comments today. I appreciate it. My name is Tom Conway, and is the microphone working?
No, you're good.
And I serve on the board of directors at Flagler Point, and I've been a certified public accountant for 30 years. I don't think that I agree with the legal counsel's complete characterization of the issues. I am pro-development, and I accepted the conditions which have transpired to allow 1901 to potentially go to 202 feet. But any higher goes squarely against tapering and encroachment and will result in an unnecessary boxed-in, claustrophobic lifestyle which can be prevented. On March 22nd, 2023, I attended the West Palm Beach Neighborhood Association's first quarter meeting at the Community Foundation, of which the mayor and Mr. Green presented the CMUD plan. And I was also in attendance at the Icona opening. Flagler Point and our neighbors have been misled. I watched the May 8th Mayor Commissioner work session on West Palm Beach TV, which produced an about-face of the comments previously made, in which I had heard. It was shocking to learn the instructions given to the city planning staff to go ahead to begin their rezoning efforts before one single public hearing. The initiative had been clear that the South would need planning and direction first. This work session unnecessarily pivoted from discussion to directive. Obviously, staff was uncomfortable since their previously reported professional opinions and conclusions in Section 7 were in support of the CMUD plan remaining as is. I believe the Flagler Point Association's committee and our legal counsel, Alan Sicklin, are better equipped to drill down into the details, so I do defer to them. A postponement appears appropriate, considering the above, as well as the timing of this vote, since it appears that the majority of the community is not in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, this concludes the public portion of our agenda. And if you did not submit a card and don't want to speak, forever hold your peace. Can we hear from the applicant? What's your name? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really quickly, the Temple serves a vital role in the community and supports.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
My apologies.
Thank you.
The Temple serves a vital role in the community, and we support them asking for fairness in their height requirement. As stated, they haven't been in the community since 1935. Now moving forward to 2023, West Palm Beach has grown and is continuing to grow. How fair is it that these new buildings are serving their own individual purposes and financial gain and are allowed to have 303 to 350 feet, but the temple that is doing for the community and are a vital entity in the community can't have the same requirements as other entities in the area. If you look at the east or south of the courthouse, there are buildings and high rises and condominiums. This is no longer Palm Beach, the retirement city. This is the new era, and we have millions of people flocking to Palm Beach and need a sanctuary and and sustainable and capable of providing numerous services to the community. As you see, they have reached out to the community to seek help, but these entities, condominiums, they did not ask people in the community if they can build high rises and skyscrapers and all these other tall buildings in the area. This is no longer Palm Beach. This is a new era, a new day, a new age. How humbling is it that the temple is making their business to come through the communities that they serve to ask for their support? And if you breathe one more time, it's going to be an issue. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's bring it back to the board. Do you have any follow-up?
Can I have just one or two comments for
Sure,
Ramona?
go ahead.
Real quickly, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We heard a lot of comments tonight, and as I mentioned in my main presentation, the temple wants to meet and has requested over 9 times to meet with the residents of Flagler Point.
Please, we didn't interrupt your talking, let him finish.
The temple remains ready, willing, and able to meet with the ownership and the unit owners of Flagler Point to hear their concerns and to see if we can clarify and, what we're requesting. We haven't been able to do that yet, despite our requests. So we, between now and city commission meeting, we would happily meet with the ownership. Just one other point: the difference. There's a difference between, in terms of the tapering off or the difference, the transition between the north of CMUD and to the south. To the north of CMUD, it's historic single-family neighborhood. There is a planning justification for having tapering off to the north. To the south, they're currently, mid-rise or high-rise buildings. It's not. There's no historic single-family neighborhoods to the south of CMUD. So that's a key difference. And then, lastly, staff agrees that we have met the code requirements for rezoning, which were before you today. So with that, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Paradello, you want to start?
Where do I start? This is tough. I guess my first question is in regards to how the CMUD changed, and it is now requesting the additional height. I completely understand this is real estate, whether it's a temple, whether it's a store, whether it's a vacant piece of property. This is progress. I'd certainly be a little concerned if I were the residents next door. I'm a little confused about the disparity of who said or who invited who and who didn't get the invitation, and about trying to talk this through with the Flagler Point. I'm wondering what Flagler Point, what their height limitations are in the future if this building were to get redeveloped, this property were to get redeveloped, what would their maximum heights be? I think that all plays into this decision, and I've still got some more to think about.
Okay, Deborah?
Yeah, I have some similar concerns about increased height as well, but also about the fairness of what's happened in the past. And now Temple Israel is requesting this change so that it's a level playing field. But I wonder if, when the developer spoke about meeting with Flagler Point, if that's, a possibility, and if there would be some changes that would come about. It's like, I don't know, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely in the same camp as the rest of the board so far. It is a complicated issue. You know, there are some questions I have that, you know, were comments that were made that really not sure, you know, the veracity of them. One of the gentlemen had said something about 4,000 new residents. Wasn't really sure where that came from. Because as far as I know, the Temple's not proposing a development at this point. They're just looking for rezoning. Some of the depictions of the buildings from the Alara, I don't recall, and I can't recall from when we had the Alara project come, because they had two buildings. They had a tall building and a short building. So I'm not really sure which one was the tall building and the short building and where it sat on the property in proximity. And then the distance between the Temple and the Flagler Point, as well as the distance between Flagler Point and the Alara, as it stands right now. And then there seemed to be someone had said something about where the Temple is on Pine Street versus, so, you know, is there an alley that separates the Temple from the, okay. I'll let staff tell me where it is, if you don't mind. Thanks. So is it a street that separates the two properties, or an alleyway, or?
The Temple Israel site to Flagler Point, it's a shared property line.
Okay.
There is no street in between.
Oh, there is no street, okay.
It's on the other side.
Okay. And then the other concern is the proposed CMUD and what's going to happen further south of them. So.
Okay, Patrick?
I would echo many of the comments made by my fellow members here tonight. I think for me, there's a question, some of the representations of the maximum build-out, if you will, of a site that is currently not proposed with any development on it, which is understood, and I believe the applicant made that clear. But I would look for some clarification from the city. They would not be allowed to build that footprint essentially to the zero lot line, 311 feet, correct? They would need to meet certain step backs at certain levels, meet FAR requirements.
There is no FAR requirement in the Curry Mixed Use District. Everything is going to be based on setbacks, the minimum setbacks provided by the sub-district.
So what are those setbacks from?
It would be a minimum of 5 feet from the interior property line off to the side.
Does it step back further after a certain height?
No.
It does not. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I'm definitely have some concerns about the consideration of this application relative to the multiple applications that have been discussed further to the south, that I don't know which of those are concrete and which are, you know, actually in production, what might actually be happening.
Yeah, but Patrick, don't let that influence you. We're here to discuss this application, not what's going on to the south.
Right. So that, I think that's an important clarification, that, you know, that we can't, it's not right to consider what could be done in the future.
But that's a big if. We don't know.
That's a big if. So I think there's still some concern there. I think it sounds like there's further discussion at the city level that's going to happen on that subject. I would have liked to see the two parties obviously come together in a meaningful way to discuss this application. Sometimes that's not possible, and unfortunately it happens at this meeting in this type of way. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of issues here.
Jean?
I guess this question is for the applicant. Was there any attempt to send a direct mail postcard to the residents, perhaps for an invitation to meet, or was the communication only with the board requesting to meet with the ownership? Is there an ethical
I'm gonna let Martin list.
line that would have been?
Mr. Oyer had handled that. We they had meetings with several of the board members and management. The invitation was supposed to have been sent by the Flagler Point management to the ownership. We didn't have all their contact information. We understood that that invitation had been made. We had planned for the gathering at Temple Israel, invited all of them, and then we were told that that meeting was canceled within several days of its anticipated occurrence. And since that time, we have had multiple opportunities to reach out. No one has wanted to sit down and talk with us. Even I had spoken to another neighbor a week ago who tried to make an introduction to one of the board members. I said, you know, we've been located on Flagler Drive next door to this property for longer than Flagler Point or its predecessor rental apartment building have existed. We would like to share our both our thoughts, what we're talking about, and at this point, we're only talking zoning. And we recognize that any potential development or redevelopment of this property is going to come back for consideration. There will be a lot of interaction that we would want to have with our neighbors, all of them. But tonight is just that opportunity to restore fairness to the zoning process and allow us to then consider what our plans may be to come back to the city and the planning board.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
So just some inner thoughts that I had. You know, the difference between 202 feet versus 306 feet, what the adverse impact would be. And then also, you know, if we're talking about equal zoning, there is a significant difference in property value. So for instance, if the temple wanted to refinance or do a remodel and take out like an equity line of credit, their valuation would be based on highest and best use. And so when we're looking at fairness, I think, you know, that's also another aspect to consider in terms of, you know, their best interest. And I think as the applicant just stated, there is no proposal for development. And if that was to be proposed, it would come either before the planning board or the city commission. So it is a lot to consider. So, I mean, I would be in favor of either, you know, postponing a vote so that the applicant can meet with the residents, or just, you know, going forward and allowing the city commission to make the final decision.
Okay, thank you. My own personal view is that Flagler Drive is a very, very desirable street address. You can see what's been going on over the last several decades along Flagler. 100 years ago, the temple probably was the highest building in that street. Today, that's not the case. Today, what drives us is intensification. You build in the core to bring people in, to reduce traffic so people can walk to work, et cetera. And those are all planning principles that I think the staff always applies to any rezoning or development. So, considering that the building is permitted to go to 202 feet, approximately 20 stories, approximately, building next door is 9. So whether they go 111 or 202 feet looking north is not going to make any difference whatsoever, because the top penthouse is going to be completely blocked, no matter which option of development the developer decides to take. So we're talking about an additional 10 floors. That's really what we're down to. I would support the application for rezoning. The city supports it. The council supports it. And if you want to object, commission meeting is the place to do it. We have to respond to the experts the expert testimony, and the information that's presented here. There was, for example, a little shadow study that one of the speakers presented, which was totally inaccurate. The shadow studies that the applicant has are extremely accurate, they're computer generated, and I would trust that before I would trust a shadow that goes right across the water to Palm Beach. That's inaccurate. So in terms of development, as I said, I would fully support it. Any other comments? None?
I have several, but this is tough. This is a really complicated, really dynamic part of the city. So many things are happening between Palm Beach Lakes and Curry Park. It's growing in leaps and bounds, and it's changing overnight. So I think I certainly, based on what I've heard tonight, I don't think I could support it. But I think that if it doesn't pass, or we could get to a deadlock or whatever, I think that we need to put both of the parties accountable to meeting before, if they were to come back to present this project again. Because it sounds like there's a huge, when the applicant says that they reached out 9 times, and then the Flagler Point says, we never heard from them 9 times, that seems odd.
Well, there's a lot of residents here tonight. There are residents here from.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the kind of information that I'm talking about. It seems like that there's a lot that we don't know.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Nothing further, Deborah? No? Anybody else? Okay.
You know, what struck me is this exact situation probably happened in reverse. When was Flagler Point built?
It converted.
20 years ago?
Converted from apartments, I believe, in 2002, around
Okay,
2000.
and when was it originally constructed? 2001. So right around 2001, the temple was in this situation where they had unobstructed view to the south and now had a neighbor on their lot line with 10 stories. So.
Okay, please, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could we invite, I believe, is it the Vice President of the board to speak to, I guess, the number of attempts that were made, and was there a meeting planned for the residents and then abruptly canceled? Is that a possibility? Are you open to that?
Well, we closed the public
Okay.
meeting, but if you want to, if you feel that's important.
Okay. Yeah, if one of the board,
Okay.
Mr. Vice President, could you speak to that really briefly?
My name is Keith Cabaceres. I am on the board at Flagler Point, and I did not have any notification of the temple wanting to reach out to speak to us. They did speak to 3 of the members, myself and Mr. Conway. We were not included. So I'm all ears. I'm willing to speak with them, sit down, see what, you know.
So the board members they did communicate with are not here today, is that what you're saying?
Yes, they're not here today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, but I'm all ears. If they want to reach out, speak to us, we're here.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll hear from the applicant.
So we, as I mentioned, we met with the president, vice president, and the general manager of Flagler Point first on May 11th. We had scheduled a follow-up. We scheduled a meeting with the members. We created an invitation. We sent it to the president and vice president. They sent an email to all their residents with info about the meeting to take place. Then they subsequently sent an email canceling that meeting. After they canceled that meeting, we sent 9 additional emails following up, requesting a meeting with all ownership. We sent that. We were communicating with Carol Mead through the Flagler Point, because we don't have the ability to reach out to all of the owners. We don't have that information. So we met with the board, the president and vice president, the general manager, communicated. We agreed to set up the meeting. We picked a date. We sent them the invitation. The meeting was scheduled. They sent an email to all the residents. Then they canceled it. They didn't tell us why. They said it would be rescheduled. We've been trying to reschedule it over 9 times. We have been trying. We have a number of emails showing that we've been trying to do so. We wanted to meet with the residents before today. We're not coming here before you today seeking to develop a building. We're just seeking to rezone from CMUD Core 2 to CMUD Core 1. As you all know, if in the future, which there's nothing right now to even talk about, but in the future, if a development was proposed, it would go before you. It wouldn't go to City Commission. It would go before you to decide that. We're happy to talk to the residents, and if in the future a development is proposed, we will obviously do as much public outreach as possible to communicate. But we've done everything that in our power to reach out to the residents, to the owners of Flagler Point. We've been communicating with Carol Mead. We've reached out to the president, vice president, and they canceled the meeting, not us. We've made diligent efforts to schedule a meeting. So that's where we stand.
Okay,
Thank you.
one final speaker.
I as well was not alerted to this meeting. But interestingly, I regularly receive postcards from the city of West Palm Beach when there's any sort of planning action. So absent the legal counsel's production of these 9 sent emails, we don't have any verification on his comments, only his testimony. I agree with my fellow board members' assessment that we are willing, able, and desirous to meet with our neighbor. And for legal counselor to make a characterization that all residents received an email is simply false.
No, he never said
Because
No, he never said that. He has no he said he has no access to all the residents. He made that very clear.
May I respond to that?
Yeah.
He said that emails were sent out to the unit owners, which, as you're aware, that unit owners are required to opt in to email notification. And truth be told, I don't know how many people, unit owners, are opted in to email notification. But our neighbor has access to public records to all unit owners that are all unit owners' addresses. It's public information. So again, I would propose that this issue is simply postponed. And I will give you my word, and I think it's fair to speak for my fellow board member, that we will meet with our neighbor to have a healthy, productive conversation about this issue. Is there anything else that you would like me to clarify?
Let's hear from the applicant, and that'll be the
Sure.
last
Thank
speaker.
you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, I had one follow-up question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Was the president of the association not able to attend tonight?
I can't speak for her. She's not here today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that me and my fellow board member is an indication of our willingness to be a part of this process. Thanks.
I just wanted to clarify that there was an email sent out to Flagler Point residents about the town hall on May 12th. It was sent as part of their newsletter. And again, we've been communicating with Carol Mead. The larger picture is, we've represented, I'm under oath tonight, that we've made numerous attempts to reach out. We've talked to the board, the vice president and president. We've made efforts. The meeting was scheduled. It was Flagler Point who canceled the meeting, not the applicant. And this is obviously a recommending body, so we can continue to meet with them before town council, or city council, city commission. But they were the first property that we reached out to. We had the meeting on May 11th. The meeting was scheduled. And there was an email sent out to all the residents of Flagler Point. It was sent on May 12th. We can tell you, their president's not here today, but I'm making that representation. We have emails documenting it. I don't know, but I think it misses the bigger picture. We've done public outreach to the broader community. They were the first property owner that we reached out to. We've tried to reach them. We have communicated with them, and we will continue to communicate. But we have done all the public outreach. The staff supports it. We meet the requirements for the rezoning.
That's
and
it.
so
Thank you.
I won't continue to go, but we've made efforts. We sent the email on May 12th. It was communicated to all the residents. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Question for you, Linda, quickly. I assume there was a nice visible sign on the site indicating that the site is scheduled for a hearing, for rezoning, and there are phone numbers?
That is correct. Per the zoning code, the applicant is required to post.
So there was due notice and quite visible?
Yes.
Okay.
And to that point, Mr. Chairman, there were also letters sent out to all residents. Is that also a requirement?
Don't know. Yep. I don't know if that's a requirement.
Yes, it's also required for the applicant to send public notices to everyone within 500 feet of the subject property.
So that would include all residences within Flagler Point.
Yeah, 500 feet of the temple, so yes, that would include Flagler Point.
How many days in advance was that sent, or
Days? 14 days is the mailer requirement.
before today?
Yes.
Okay.
But that mailer is simply about a hearing, not specifically what's going on. That's where they come here to find out what's going on.
Okay, understood.
I still haven't heard from staff what is the Flagler Point's potential build out if they were to sell their units and do the same thing that the temple could do.
Again, Rick Green, Development
Sure.
Services Director. As the chair mentioned, that's subject to another process that we're going through. So there are two parallel
Yeah, we should.
processes. What you're considering today is the rezoning of the Temple Israel site. On a separate track, we're looking at the expansion of the CMUD South. So again, we're going to have a workshop on July 27th. We're going to have another workshop with the board, and then another formal hearing with this board, and then we'll have 2 readings with the city commission. So we'll have 5 opportunities to discuss the expansion of CMUD South.
Right.
Flagler Point today was approved as a planned development dating back to early 2000s. So that's what governs the development. If it's included within expansion of CMUD South, one of the discussion items that we will have is, does Flagler Point want their underlying zoning to be changed to a Core 1, a Core 2 district, which they would have that right, or we could leave it intact and the PD would govern any future development of that property.
So that your response to changing the CMUD, they're giving them the footage that they're looking for is because you're anticipating that the CMUD very well could expand to the south.
It's our
makes
intention
sense.
to extend it to the south, primarily because we'd like to see additional redevelopment of those properties immediately east of Dixie Highway.
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
Now, that makes a lot more sense to me.
But again, that's
saying
a
that, yes.
separate track.
I understand that too. I understand that too, but it's looking at, seeing your vision, what your overall plan is, so.
That's it. Thank you. Go ahead.
I would say, I mean, trying to come to some summation of everything here, it seems like, in my opinion, there's a strong evidence to support based on fundamental fairness for an approval of the request. But I would also, at the same time, support perhaps a continuance of this request so that the parties can meet in a meaningful way.
I would be prepared to make a motion for approval with the condition that prior to the city commission meeting, the applicant meet with Flagler Point in a formal setting, and they would send out notices to the addresses of record to all the unit owners. So if we're able to stipulate that or give a strong recommendation, I'd be prepared to move in that direction, because at the end of the day, the city commission will.
Those mailers, they are supposed to, each one of those owners is supposed to get a mailer.
Right, so there's a distinction here, the applicant versus the city. I believe the city sent out the notice for public hearing, and that was sent to the address of record for all the unit owners. This is for a separate meeting, kind of like in a town hall setting.
Agreed.
Lunch, so on and so forth. So I'd be prepared to make that motion. Again, bearing in mind that the city commission will ultimately make the final decision.
Patrick, you want to say something, or?
I would second that motion if it's on the
Okay.
table.
We have a mover,
Mr.
we have
Chair,
a
if you would use the
Sam?
form of motion in your,
You have to read,
you have a form of motion in your back.
you have to read the 3 chapters.
I'll read it. You want me to read it? I got it right here.
So with the motion I'd like to make would accompany that the applicant meet with Flagler Point prior to meeting with the city commission. So I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of the planning board case number 1955A, a request by Harvey E. Oyer III of Shetson Bowen on behalf of Temple Israel of West Palm Beach Incorporated to rezone the 1.28 acre subject property located at 1901 North Flagler Drive from Curry Mixed Use District Core 2 Subdistrict to Curry Mixed Use District Core 1 Subdistrict. This motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Meeting's over. The next it goes to the commission.
An interesting one, I could hear it all. We have just 60 seconds worth of business so we can adjourn. Okay, next on our agenda are code revision cases, of which there are none. We move to other business, unfinished business, new business. Anything from staff on that? We stand adjourned. Thank you.